Superfoods promise to flatten your belly, detox your body, and protect you from disease. But what if the entire idea is more marketing than science? For years, we've been sold the fantasy that acai, goji berries, quinoa, matcha, and other trendy ingredients have magical powers ordinary foods lack. But here's the truth, almost no one hears. There is no scientific category called superfoods. It's a label invented for marketing, not nutrition. And once you see how it's used to shape your beliefs and your purchases, the whole wellness story starts to fall apart. People believe in superfoods for a few powerful reasons. First, the idea of food as medicine is genuinely rooted in real science facts. Eating more plant-based, nutrient-dense foods can lower the risk of heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and certain cancers. So, when headlines highlight a berry rich in antioxidants or a grain high in fiber, it fits into a story we already want to believe, that a single food can become a shortcut to health. Second, there is the appeal of the exotic and the ancient. Foods marketed as ancient grains or brought from the Amazon rainforest or from Himalayan traditions tap into hidden history, making modern processed lives feel connected to a lost wisdom. And third, the food industry has a huge financial incentive to push these stories. Labeling something as a superfood, superfruit, or supergrain has been tied to big jumps in new product launches and sales. Here's where it gets interesting. Once a food is crowned a superfood, it often shows up in everything: drinks, snack bars, powders, usually at a premium price, even when the amount included is tiny. On the surface, the evidence can look convincing. Lab studies might show that a compound in blueberries helps slow the growth of certain cancer cells in a dish, or that a pigment in turmeric reduces inflammation markers in animals. Other research might link regular consumption of beans, nuts, or green tea with better blood pressure, cholesterol levels, or lower risk of chronic disease in large population studies. These findings get simplified into punchy headlines. This berry fights cancer, or this spice melts belly fat, and suddenly the nuance disappears. The myth builds. If one lab study shows a benefit in cells or mice, then surely drinking a daily smoothie with that ingredient must protect a human body from nearly everything. But this is the part most people never hear. What works in isolated cells or at high doses in controlled conditions may not work the same way in a real person eating normal amounts as part of a complex diet. And when researchers zoom out and look at overall eating patterns, they consistently find that long-term health depends on the full pattern of what you eat and how you live, not on one hero ingredient. So, what does real science actually say about superfoods? First, there is broad agreement that many foods on superfood lists, like berries, leafy greens, beans, nuts, whole grains, and certain spices, are genuinely nutrient-dense and can support better health when eaten regularly. They tend to be rich in fiber, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. And diets higher in these foods are associated with lower rates of obesity, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. That is a solid, evidence-based science fact. But here's the twist almost everyone gets wrong. These nutrients are not exclusive to trendy superfoods. The same antioxidants in blueberries also appear in many other colorful fruits. The vitamin C promoted in some superfruits is often higher in very ordinary foods like bell peppers or guavas. The protein you get from quinoa can also be found in cheaper staples like lentils, beans, and other grains. By focusing only on the fashionable foods, many people overlook the everyday options that deliver similar benefits without the hype. Another key detail: the term superfood has no strict scientific or legal definition in most places. In some regions, regulators have even restricted the use of the word superfood on packaging unless specific. Strong evidence is provided for a health claim. That tells you how loosely the term is usually used in advertising and social media. Superfoods are often presented as having near magical preventive powers, warding off cancer, boosting the immune system to extreme levels, or detoxing organs. Yet, careful reviews of the evidence often describe the science as incomplete. overhyped, or based on small preliminary studies. In other words, many of these claims are examples of misunderstood science, real findings turned into sweeping promises that go far beyond what the data actually supports. Now, this is where researchers were stunned when they looked at consumer behavior. They found that the idea of superfoods can actually distract people from the bigger picture of health. Some studies and surveys suggest that people may overestimate how healthy their diet is if they simply add a few marketed superfoods, even while continuing to eat lots of highly processed, high sugar, or high salt foods. In a sense, the myth of superfoods can become an urban legend of nutrition. A comforting story that a handful of powders or exotic berries can compensate for sleep deprivation, stress, low activity, and an otherwise poor diet. It can also shift attention away from sustainable, local, or traditional foods that are just as nutritious but lack a glamorous label. Here's the twist almost everyone gets wrong from a sustainability and global perspective. Chasing imported superfoods while ignoring local produce can increase environmental impact and widen health inequalities, all in the name of a buzzword. Here's where it gets interesting from a myth-busting angle. Some foods are probably super not because they are rare or expensive, but because they are simple and widely available. Legumes like beans and lentils, standard fruits and vegetables like apples, carrots, onions, or cabbage, and whole grains like oats often provide impressive combinations of fiber, vitamins, and protective compounds at very low cost. Yet, they rarely get the same attention as exotic berries or trendy powders. Misunderstood history plays a role too. Many cultures have long used everyday staples like beans, leafy greens, and herbs as pillars of health. But these foods only get rediscovered as new superfoods once they are rebranded for modern markets. When educational videos and documentary voiceovers focus on miracle ingredients instead of whole eating patterns, they unintentionally support the myth that health is hidden in a short list of secret foods instead of in consistent, balanced habits. At the same time, dismissing all superfood-related claims would also be misleading. Some of the foods commonly labeled as superfoods do have research suggesting potentially useful effects. For example, certain berries or legumes may help improve blood sugar control, blood pressure, or cholesterol when eaten regularly as part of an overall healthy diet. Compounds like anthocyanins, sulforaphane, and other plant chemicals are genuinely interesting to scientists because of their possible roles in reducing inflammation and supporting long-term health. The key is that these effects are gradual, modest, and depend heavily on context, dose, frequency, and everything else you eat, and do not dramatic overnight transformations. Real science is slow, cautious, and full of uncertainty, which does not make great headlines, but it does give a much more honest picture of how food and health actually interact. So, are superfoods really that super for you? The surprising truth is this: there is no single food that can guarantee health, cure disease, or detox your body. And there is no magic list of ingredients that can replace a balanced, varied diet, regular movement, and overall lifestyle. Many so-called superfoods are just healthy, nutrient-dense foods, often no better than cheaper, everyday alternatives that offer similar nutrients without the marketing spin. The most powerful superpower in nutrition is the pattern: plenty of plants, whole grains, legumes, nuts. Modest amounts of animal products if you choose, limited ultra-processed foods, and habits you can stick with for years, not days. That is the misunderstood science hiding behind the hype, and the real myth-busting answer to whether superfoods live up to their legend. So next time you see a dramatic claim about a miracle food, remember, it might be more super hype than super health, and the quiet, ordinary foods on your plate could be doing more for you than you think. What myth should I break down next?